Level up. Sorry.
Level up. 3, 2, 1.
Dos, tres.
Wait, can we keep this? 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Will They, Won't They? A podcast for the hopeless
And the romantic.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Danielle.
And today we are talking about...
I'm getting better.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
And welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Cool. So, Miss Sarah Marshall's in the building.
She's in the building.
We're trying to forget her, but...
we want to say thank you to Britt for shouting.
Yes, Brittany.
Or for shouting at us. No, for recommending this movie to us. If you follow us on Instagram, we do ask you guys for recommendations, and if you do, and we pick it, we will shout you out. So thank you, Miss Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. We have similar taste. I know Brittany's obsessed with Titanic like me. Loves Eminem. I know these details. So, you know what? I'm really happy to give you a little shout out. Thank you for commenting and supporting our page and our podcast. We appreciate it, you beautiful, beautiful lady.
Beautiful lady. That was for you, Britt. Also, if you recommend, you'll get a little ditty from me.
A ditty.
A little ditty.
Love that.
A beautiful lady, thank you for recommending this movie. It was a blast to watch it. We thought of you the whole time. Thank you, Brittany.
Wow, that was gorgeous.
So yeah, if you want me to sing to you, recommend a podcast. Or recommend a movie.
Recommend a podcast.
Recommend our podcast.
To everyone you ever meet. We're a lot. Okay, so yeah, we are talking about Forgetting Sarah Marshall today. Another one of my... I feel like every episode I'm like, this is one of my favorites. Clearly, I just have watched a lot of romantic films.
Love romantic movies.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. I'm excited for when we get into like the more serious romantic movies.
Just so you know, eventually we're going to be doing dark and dramatic romantic films.
Just so you know. Just so you know. We're going... we are going to get into serious romantic movies. Obviously, the two of us can't shut up and make jokes about it, so we will be making jokes about it, so don't worry. We won't be serious.
Yeah, we won't be serious.
But the content.
The content of our characters.
Headstrong girl. Obstinate, strong girl. Head.
All right.
That's a little sneak preview.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
We are doing it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
I'm so reluctant.
Katie really doesn't want this to be a thing, but I'm making it a thing against her wishes.
So we're getting into it.
Let's get into it. 2008. This movie came out in 2008, feeling great. The year before I graduated high school.
2008, yeah. I feel like I need to get an elephant out of the room, or an elephant out of the way, or
talk about
an
the
elephant that's
in the
room that needs to be talked about.
I would love to hang out with an elephant in the room.
Me too. Obviously, everyone who knows me knows I am a big, huge lover of Russell Brand. So obviously this movie came out. This was like the year that I was like, I discovered him.
Yeah.
So I've seen this movie many a time. And yeah, let's just talk about it. Let's talk about Russell.
We're going to talk about Russell. He has like such a like small part in this movie. And it's like,
what do you mean?
It's not a small part. No, but I mean like we're going to talk about him a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's just going to happen.
It's just going to happen.
I know I'm obsessed with like a lot of like people. If you listen to this podcast, every episode is just me being like, I'm obsessed. But
if you're listening.
If you know me.
Yeah, true.
There's like people that I love, and then there's like Russell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we stan. We appreciate, we admire, we adore. Yeah. We've met.
I feel like it's like, you're in Katie's inner circle when she gives you the Russell monologue.
The Russell stories.
The Russell stories.
Because we have multiple. Russell, if you're listening... you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But anyway.
There's a lot of people, if you're listening in this movie, we'll get into it. But, like, the whole cast
is
if
beautiful.
You're listening.
It's funny because, like,
Hit me up.
it actually totally makes sense because, like, you're obsessed with Bill Hader and I'm obsessed.
That's true. We like the side characters in this movie.
And it's, like, it makes sense for us.
I'm obsessed with Bill Hader. I think he's a literal genius. I think he's so funny. If you haven't watched his show Barry on HBO,
So good.
it is, he, like, says it's, like, a representation of his anxiety and stuff. It's just, like, if you're someone living with anxiety, you feel it. And I can't talk about Bill
Also,
Hader.
just, like, Stefan.
Stefan.
If you were a SNL
like,
person. Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
I have the best spot. If you're looking to get absolutely wrecked, listen to our podcast.
Also, like, the what you say bit with him and Andy. And
he has so many iconic moments in SNL.
Also, Skeleton Twins.
Oh, Skeleton Twins is such a
Dark,
good movie.
but beautiful.
Very dark, but so good. Him and Kristen Wiig give dramatic performances, and obviously the two of them together are comedic actors, so, like, there are funny parts within that movie. But that movie...
I feel like I've gone on this rant before, so I apologize to everyone who's listening, but, like, I hate when people are surprised that comedic actors are good at dramatic acting. Yep. Comedy is the hardest genre.
Listen, dramatic actors, not all of them can do comedy.
Period.
Yep.
Most of them can't.
But a lot of comedic actors could do drama.
And we're talking high drama. We're talking Oscar-worthy drama.
Yep.
Okay.
Jonah Hill in this movie has done dramatic movies. I could rant about this. I think comedic actors are very underrated and underutilized. I think if you watch Skeleton Twins, you'll get it. Like, that movie is beyond, like, it made me sob in ways, like, I did not know I needed to sob.
Yeah, no, same. That was a very dark and beautiful
dark
movie.
And, like, just prepare yourself if you are going to watch it, but it's so good.
Also, side note, we didn't watch, like, the extended version of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
The extended version, Kristen Wiig's actually in the movie.
Really?
She plays a yoga teacher.
And, that makes so much sense. And,
like, it's right after Jason is, like, having breakfast with, like, the booze. He, like, goes to yoga.
Okay.
And she's like, no drinks allowed in here or whatever. And then she's like, and he's like, it's just juice. And she's like, I know that's not just juice. And then, like, Russell's also there doing yoga. And she's just, like, obsessing with him. She's like, I'm just going to lean on you just, like, for me.
That makes so much sense.
But, yeah, Kristen Wiig actually had a little...
I love the Judd Apatow circle. Like, this movie, I think it was, like, executive produced by Judd Apatow. Produced, yeah. By Judd Apatow. And, like, there's, like, a group of actors. And I feel like there's a new generation of Judd Apatow actors that are getting bigger. But, like, in the 2000s and, like, 2010s, like, it was always, like, Kristen Wiig, Bill Hader, Jason Segel, like, all the people in this movie. Seth Rogen.
Jonah Hill, all those people. But here's the thing that I love about Judd Apatow and, like, what he does in comedy. And, like, literally, the reason that Jason made this movie was because after Freaks and Geeks ended and Undeclared,
which is so good.
Which is so good. And Undeclared is also really funny and good. He was struggling for a few years trying to get parts in regular movies. Yeah. Just, like, as a regular actor. And Judd, after Freaks and Geeks was canceled, Judd was like, I am going to make all of the people in the show extremely famous. Like, he was set out to, like, make those kids stars, which he literally did.
All of
James Franco, Seth Rogen.
Linda Cardellini.
I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, with the advice that he gave to Jason was like, you have to write your own stuff. Yeah. Like, you have to write your own stories because that's what people are going to be interested in. And so Jason wrote this story, which was loosely based on truth in his life. Yeah. Like, the naked breakup actually happened to him.
Yeah.
That's little things like that. So he wrote the story, and when he pitched it, they were like, we love it. And so, you know, Judd Apatow has facilitated so many, like,
stars.
So, and like, same with Superbad, like, Seth and his best friend Evan wrote that. Yeah. It's like
even his children are incredibly talented. Maude Apatow in Euphoria. I mean, it's just good to be in that inner circle.
I just think that Judd saw an opportunity for different comedic stories to be told and knew that they could only be told if people were writing their own stories.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's, not to go on a whole rant about it, but it's just, it's so fascinating to me, and I think this movie's, like, one of the most and that's what Judd always talks about, is, like, telling the truth. And this, to me, is one of the most, like, raw and truthful breakup movies because the way that, and we'll get into this, but like the way that, you know, Jason or Peter,
they allow him to mourn.
How he acts is so relatable.
Yeah.
If you've been through any kind of heartache.
What's that like?
Yeah, right, yeah. So, now we can...
Yeah, we could, I mean, this is what the podcast is for, like us just talking about what we're passionate about. And like, I could honestly talk about comedians and like how in awe and like how respected I think they are in my eyes. Like, yeah, I think it's because you know that it comes from like kind of a broken place with a lot of comedians. Like, a lot of comedians are also broken, and like I kind of relate to that. And I just think it's so great to see them succeed and be so successful and like just do what they love. I just love comedians and comedic actors. Underrated. Let's get into it. So, forgetting Sarah Marshall. How do we forget? How do we forgive? How do we love again?
Right. So.
Delilah.
Ooh, Delilah. I love Delilah.
I felt a very Delilah moment just then.
Delilah.
Thank you so much for writing in, listener. Anyway, here's Imagine Dragons with Radioactive.
Imagine Dragons. I would have been like, here's Leanne Rimes with
I would have
Arms of an Angel. Or
here's Celine Dion. It's all coming back.
Yes.
It's all coming back. It's all coming back. It's my favorite Celine Dion song.
So the movie starts off with Jason Segel. His name is Peter in this movie. In his apartment, making a big bowl of cereal. You got some Spoon on in the background.
In like a baking bowl.
I want to love you madly. Yeah. It's like a good vibe.
Oh, it's cake.
It's cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. I confuse them sometimes.
Cake and Spoon.
I confuse them.
Makes a meal.
But yeah, they're having a good old time. And, a huge bowl of cereal.
Massive.
Might add. And, like, the apartment's a mess, and he's, like, sitting on the couch watching TV in his sweats, and he gets a phone call. Oh, and they show, like, all these pictures of, like, him and who you assume is his partner.
Yeah.
Like, calendars and, like, framed photos of them, like, kissing and, like, at the beach and, like, whatever. And then he gets a call, and I love the way they do this because you can't hear what she's saying, but he's like... Oh, like, you're coming home? Like, I didn't realize you were coming home so soon. He's kind of looking around.
Yeah.
And then you can tell, she's like, oh, what are you eating? And he, like, looks down at his bowl of cereal and he goes, salad. Bro, the amount of times I'm on the phone with my mom eating, like, something disgusting. Yeah. And she's like, what are you eating? And I'm like, kale.
And this is all while he's, like, watching Access Hollywood, and they're talking about him and his girlfriend, who is Sarah Marshall. She's a famous actress on TV doing those, like, really cheesy crime shows.
It's like CSI.
Yeah. And he does the scoring for it, so he makes all, like, the ominous undertones. But, yeah, while he's watching that, he gets that phone call. So, you know that immediate sprint to, like, clean your apartment when someone's like, I'm coming over, and, like, you're
it's
like,
but it's also, like, a good, subtle kind of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Because it's like the apartment looks like someone who maybe could possibly have depression lives in it. But he's like, I need to make sure it doesn't look like I have
depression.
Yeah. So he cleans the whole apartment and he takes a shower. And he comes out of the bathroom.
I'm just excited.
Comes out of the bathroom with his towel on, and Sarah Marshall,
who is played by Kristen Bell.
Who
love her.
Kristen Bell, if you're listening.
Perfection.
You really are perfect. Like, Veronica Mars, amazing. Like,
The Good Place. Talk about a comedy show that has such great meaning behind it. It is, watch The Good Place. She's so funny in it. I think it's so good.
And I'm obsessed with, what's his name?
Who?
Zaddy, what is his name?
Adam Scott.
No. Yes.
He is in that in a couple episodes.
But from Cheers.
Oh, what is his name? I can't remember.
Shit.
I only write down the names of the people in the immediate movie.
You're like, you know me with names.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never watched The Good Place.
The Good Place is really good. But Kristen Bell is, if you're listening, we're obsessed with you.
Truly.
You're so pretty, so smart, so funny. And, like, just, I love how open she is about her own struggles with anxiety. What's his name?
Ted Danson.
But yeah,
beautiful.
Sarah Marshall is played by Kristen Bell.
We love.
Yeah, and she comes in and...
and she says, Peter, we need to talk.
And he goes, I have a surprise for you.
And you
Opens
hear
his tail.
his little peen slapping up against his leg.
Because he's like wiggling his leg. It's just so funny.
It's so funny. And then she says, Peter, we need to talk. And then he drops his towel. Mm-hmm. And then they like they show the dick, which, you know what, I really appreciate in a movie because so infrequently do we see the male genitalia in
the
films.
male organs. Yeah.
So yeah, you get a little sneak peek of
Jason Segel's dick.
Of Jason Segel's little cutie.
Good for you, bud.
Cutie patootie. And
Jason Segel, if you're listening, it's good. It's not just a little cutie patootie.
It is cute. That's a compliment.
I agree.
I would rather a dick be cute than like not
intimidating.
No, not intimidating. No, you're thinking of it wrong. You're thinking I'm saying cute like.
Oh, I see.
It's
I see.
Small. I'm saying it's cute like adorable. Like it's a cute. Yeah. It's a cute little penis.
Little pureness.
But yeah. So yeah, that happens, and then she's like, Pete, why don't you put some clothes on?
He's like, are you breaking up with me?
Yeah, and it's clear that she is, and so he's like, I'm not going to go put clothes on.
Because if I put clothes on, then it's over. Which, like, I mean, it's going to be over regardless if you're naked or clothed, bud.
So then he says, they sit down, and he's like, who's the dude? And she's like, what? It's not that, Peter. It's just, like, our lives are taking different directions, and, like, we're just not the same people we were 5 years ago, blah, blah. And then he's like, maybe if we just hold each other. And so he's like hugging her while he's naked. Yeah. And which, by the way, I also want to point this out. Like in that scene, she's kind of like grossed out that he's hugging her while she's naked. And then she says to him, like, there is someone else.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying because I feel like men always assume that.
I was just going to say, it's annoying when, like, you're breaking up with someone and immediately they go, who's the other guy? And it's like, what if this was about my actual feelings and how I'm feeling in the relationship and not about, like, who's next? Like, obviously in this movie,
that is what happened.
That is what happened. But a lot of the times, like, it's just such a, like, easy way out to, like, switch to anger rather than sit and feel your sadness over the fact that this is over. You can switch to anger and be like, there's someone else and she's been cheating on me and she's evil, you know? It's weird. But, so, there is someone else. And, yeah.
She basically runs out after that. She runs out of the house.
She runs out of the house and
then basically it's just Peter trying to cope with the breakup. So, after Sarah walks out, you kind of get like a monologue, or not a monologue, I mean what is it called?
A monologue.
Not a monologue.
Montage. Yeah.
So, after Sarah walks out, you get a montage of...
A montage.
You get a montage of Peter kind of like hooking up with people, and it's not going well. There's a lot of like crying and like...
The thing I love about this movie that like they don't really show in a lot of movies, and I just watched a video essay on like masculinity shown within movies the other day. That usually when a man is upset in a movie, they'll show you like a moment of like teary eyes and one tear, and then they pull it back. What I love about this movie is you sit in the sadness, and it shows this grown 8 foot man like sobbing, breaking down, like going to have sex and crying after the sex and like talking to his brother and wondering what he should do and like being sad. And I feel like that so rarely happens in movies.
One of my favorite scenes is when he's like talking to his brother, and he's like, which is Bill Hader, and he's like, and Bill's like, how are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm doing okay. And then it like flashes to him on the couch watching Project Runway, wrapped in a blanket with like food all around him, and he's just like one of the contestants is going home, and he's like,
of Peter saying.
And we rarely see men in that position, even though men totally go through that when they're going through breakups. I was also just watching a thing about masculinity and like how like all the guys, it was like a group of men, and they were talking, and he was like, I've been on the bathroom floor in the fetal position after a breakup. And all the guys were like, oh, I've been there too.
Yep.
But that's not something that we are, like,
yeah,
we're not exposed to that. We're
Yeah.
told that that's not normal or not okay. So
Yeah.
I do think that's great about this movie, is you see a grown-ass man in his feelings the whole ass
The
time.
whole movie. I love, and then, like, it's not like they just give him the week to be sad.
Yeah.
Like, he decides he's going to go to Hawaii, and while he's there, he's, like, sobbing the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
And basically, his brother is like, you got to get your shit together. Like, you're going crazy. Like,
yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. Like,
His
maybe
brother,
I
who's
should...
played by Bill Hader.
Yeah. Oh, I already said that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And he's like, maybe I should take a trip. But his brother's like, yeah, go to the Alps. And he's like, the Alps?
Like,
And
why
he's
would
like-
that be fun?
He's like, maybe I'll go to Hawaii. Sarah used to talk about this place, and he's like, I don't think you should go somewhere where Sarah... And he's like, oh, what? Sarah Marshall's heard of Hawaii, so I can't go to Hawaii? And his brother's like, go to Hawaii. So,
Go to
just
Hawaii.
go. So he decides to go, and I think he does have good intentions, like,
yeah.
just thinking
To
that...
get his mind off of things.
But, like, bro, Hawaii is the most romantic.
It's
like,
so
everyone gets married and
romantic.
proposed to in Hawaii.
You're going to see a million weddings.
Yeah.
You're going to see honeymooners. You're going to see happy couples.
Yeah.
Like, so rare do people go to Hawaii by themselves to be like, I'm going to find myself.
Right?
At, like, a resort.
At a resort, exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, maybe if you're going, like, on a rustic journey through Hawaii. But, like, yeah. So... He gets to Hawaii and, like, goes to the resort and is basically like, hey, I didn't book a reservation, but, like,
You have
and
anything?
She's like, whoa,
Yeah.
no, we don't have anything except for the Kapua suite, which is $6,000 a night. And he's like, okay, well, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And that's me. Oh, and this is when we meet
Mila Kunis, who is playing Rachel.
Yes.
Another beautiful, beautiful, beautiful person.
Yes.
Very confusing for me in my younger days.
I love that. So, yeah. So, Mila Kunis, her name's Rachel in the movie, is talking to Peter about, like, the booking, whatever. And then he is looking out the window and he sees Sarah Marshall. And he's like, kind of looks like, obviously, like, flabbergasted. And then Rachel's like, oh, people are so excited. Like, the actress Sarah Marshall's here. And he's like, that's my ex-girlfriend. We just broke up 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh. And then it's like, she's, like, coming towards them. And he's like,
Ugh.
is she coming over here? And Rachel's like, yeah, she's coming right now.
She's here.
And then she shows up with Aldous Snow, which is played by Russell Brand. And that's when Peter realizes that Aldous is
the other man.
Sarah's partner. And when and Aldous, like, shakes his hand and is like, oh, yeah, I'm Aldous. Nice to meet ya. And Peter's like, yeah, I know who you are. You're very famous. So
He goes, yeah, I am.
yeah, I am for my sins. But yeah, so they have, like, a very awkward interaction. Sarah thinks that Sarah's like, what are you doing here? And Peter goes,
I'm here to kill you.
came here to murder you. Oh my God, so
Which,
good.
like, when you break up with someone, that is a little bit in the back of your mind as a female presenting person. It's like, are they going to murder me now?
Yeah.
That I've broken their heart.
So it's awkward, to say the least. And Rachel feels bad for him. And she says, while they're all having this conversation, Rachel's like, oh, we booked the Kapua suite for you. And then Sarah and Aldous walk away, and Peter's like, hey, thank you for bailing me out, but, like, I can't afford that place. And she's like, no one can afford it. It's like
for Oprah and Celine Dion.
Dion. Like,
I just mentioned her
I did
earlier.
mention Celine. So she's like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, just, you have to clean up after yourself. Which, how cool would that be?
Like, someone sees how sad you are and is like, here's a free $6,000 a night suite.
Yeah.
Just clean up after yourself.
Amazing.
That's what I want.
So then the first, like, 2 days is just him weeping, and literally the front desk calls him and is like, someone's complaining about an old woman crying.
And he's like, yeah, I think it's the woman above me. She's like, you're on the top floor, Peter.
And he's like, I'll
try to keep it down.
Yeah.
So, like, we go through him, like, doing various activities to get his mind off of Sarah.
A lot of
like,
drinking.
A lot of drinking. And we also see that it's kind of thrown Sarah for a loop. Like, when she's talking to Aldous, it's very, like, what's he doing here? I don't understand why he has to be here. Like, a lot of that energy. And he does go take surf lessons with Paul Rudd, who plays, what's his name? His real name is Chuck, but he goes by Kunu. And such a good part.
I love that part. Even just when he's like, oh, Peter, I'm going to give you a Hawaiian name. And then he's like staring at him and he goes, Pipiopi. Paul Rudd, if you're listening.
We love you.
We love you still.
If you're listening and you listened to Clueless,
we still love you.
We still love you in the past 3 weeks.
Yes.
Since we've talked about you.
Yes.
Give us a call.
Give us a call, bud. But yeah, so love that. And basically, he doesn't teach him how to surf at all.
Yeah. He's he goes off the vibes, man.
Yeah.
He's one of those.
He's very, if life gives you lemons, just say fuck the lemons.
I have that written down.
Classic.
Yeah, so Peter keeps running into Sarah and Aldous at the resort because it's a small resort.
Yeah.
They have all the same activities. Like, there's a couple times when, like, he goes to dinner and Sarah and Aldous are there and, like...
And Jonah Hill plays, like, he plays, like, the waiter.
Yeah.
And he's so funny. He's in that role.
Yeah, he's, like, such a fan of Aldous Snow and, like, gives him his demo, like, says, like, you know, like, if you need anything, let me know. Very, like,
he's, like,
over-eager.
A little creepy.
Yeah.
And it's so subtle, like, the character that he plays is, like, kind of a dick.
Yeah. I'll go fuck myself then.
Yeah, he's really funny. But, like, the first night Jason is going to dinner and, like, gets there and he's like, I just dinner for one. And he's like, oh, is your wife meeting you?
Yeah.
And Peter's like, no. And he's like, is your girlfriend meeting you? And he's like, no. He's like, oh, that's kind of sad. You're just going to sit here alone?
Do you want a magazine
or something? It's going to be so boring. And, like, he sits down, and, of course, it's, like, near Sarah and Aldous. And then there's, like, people right behind him getting proposed to. It's, like, such a shit show of a trip. And he, like, Skypes with his brother and his brother's wife, Liz. And they basically tell him, like, you need to make some friends. Like, get out there. He's like, I mean, I've been talking to people at the resort, but, like, everyone's kind of weird.
Yeah.
He's like, there is this one girl, Rachel, who works at the front desk.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader's like, you're just going to have meaningless sex with her? And he's like, you told me to make friends. Like,
Bill Hader's so funny.
He's so funny.
So Peter decides he's going to, you know, put himself out there. So he goes to Rachel. He's, like, going to this, like, 4th of July luau. And Rachel's working it, and he says, hey, do you want to, like, hang out sometime? And Rachel's like, yeah, there's, like, a beach thing after this with, like, a lot of our friends. Do you want to come? And he was like, as like, a date? She was like, sure, whatever. And he's like, wait, if you want to, she's like, don't make it weird, Peter. Just come. So at the 4th of July luau.
And it's very different, I think, than what Peter's, like, used to with girls. Mm-hmm. And also it's, like, there's that weird, like, are we on a date or are we not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the 4th of July luau, Peter has to watch Aldous serenade Sarah Marshall with the infamous song
Inside of you, inside you, is it wrong to be how I long to be? Inside you. Gorgeous.
Inside you. And it just makes Peter very uncomfortable, so he leaves the luau, has a really chaotic scene where he helps murder a pig for some other thing. So after the luau, he goes to the beach hangout with Rachel. And she's, like, really opening up to him. Like, you can tell there's, like, a connection there. Like, she really, like... It's not that she just feels bad for him, because, like, that's where it started. But she's, like, really seeing he's, like, funny and, like, just a doof.
She clearly likes his vibe and is curious about him. And I think, like, yeah, clearly she's kind of going through her own thing. Like, she opens up about how she's, like, didn't go... she quit school and she moved to Hawaii for this guy. And now she's just kind of, like, living in Hawaii because she loves it.
Yeah.
And Peter's like, oh, like, what happened with the guy? Like, and she goes, he was just a boy. I always love that line.
Yep. Because it's so real. He's just a boy.
Just like every other one.
Yep.
Just a boy.
They just come and go, don't they? As they please.
So, they're at this beach hang, and this like guy comes with like these two guys come in, and Rachel's like, "Get off my island, motherfucker!"
Yeah, she's like intense.
She's intense, and Peter's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Like completely like confused, and she's like, and he's like, "This isn't your island.
Are you keeping her warm for me while I'm gone?" Like, it's obviously her ex-boyfriend. He's so gross.
They're like screaming at each other. Basically, Peter just picks her up and carries her away.
Yeah.
And they go to this place, Lazy Joe's, which seems to be like a local.
Yeah, it's like a local
hangout.
bar. Yeah.
And there's like live music, and there's like open mic, I guess, and
Peter was telling Rachel earlier about how he's been writing this rock opera, and it's like a Dracula rock opera, which needs to happen IRL.
Jason, if you're listening,
can we get the Dracula rock opera, please? But he goes to the bathroom while she's getting them drinks, and he sees this like topless photo of Rachel in the bathroom. And when he comes back out, he lets her know, like, "Hey, did you know there's a picture of you like flashing in the bathroom?" And she's like, "Ugh, I hate it. Like, I asked the bar owner to take it down, but he won't." And she goes, "But anyway, I have a surprise for you." And they call Peter up on stage to sing a song from his rock opera.
And he's just like, out of context, like, this is weird. Like, I can do anything else. And she's just like, "Dracula musical!" Like, she really wants to hear it. And the one thing we haven't really talked about, but this movie does a really good job of like flashing to scenes of like him and Sarah together. One of them being at this, like, right before the rock opera thing. She went to go get herself a drink at the bar, and he's like, "Oh, I can get it for you." And she's like, "I'm not that type of girl. I don't need you to dote on me." And then it flashes to him like always holding Sarah's purse everywhere and just
being asked to get out of pictures of Sarah.
Clearly being like that guy.
The
like
guy,
that,
yeah.
Yeah, like Sarah's the main character.
Like he might as well be her purse as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then as he's like, after he performs the song, which is like so funny because he's just like in his, I don't even know how to do that accent, but like the Dracula accent.
Yeah, like a very it's getting kind of hard to believe
things are going to get better. It's really funny and absurd in that context, but you can tell is like really
charmed
impressed
by it.
Yeah. And it flashes to like a memory of like Sarah just being like, "Pete, I don't get it. Like, I don't get this." Like,
and he's like, "Let me play it for you again." And she's like, "Don't play it for me again.
Please don't play it again."
Yeah, she's like, "It's good, but I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand it."
And I love that because it's like, when you have the rose-colored glasses on, when you're still in love with the person, when you're still in the relationship, it's so easy for certain things to feel normal or to feel like, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But like, when you step out of it, you can see like, actually, I really want someone who supports my art.
Yeah.
Actually, I really want someone who doesn't make me carry their purse everywhere and like pretend I'm not there. Like, you just realize there are things that like you've sort of either forgotten were important to you or like didn't know were important to you because you were in that relationship for so long. So I really love that about this movie. How it shows those moments and you're like, there was cracks that you didn't realize, that you ignored.
Yeah, that you ignored.
You know?
Yeah. This movie does do a really good job at showing, like, how when you first break up, you look back on it, and it's like, but these were all the great times we had. Look at how amazing this was. And then as you get some distance in space and time, like, you look back and you're like, oh, wait, but this happened.
That sucked. Yeah.
So, and, like, clearly Rachel is very supportive of, like, his music and, like, thinks it's so fun and, like, is just there to be like, that was so good. Like, so they leave the bar after he sings his Dracula musical song, and Peter tries to kiss Rachel.
Yes.
And her Libra ass.
She pulls back, and it's very awkward, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." Like, it's just awkward, and she's just like, "Peter, I just don't want to complicate things. Like, it's
boundaries."
I like you, but I just don't want to make things complicated. And honestly, I can't blame her. Like,
No.
and think about being that beautiful and being in this like paradise escape place. I'm sure she gets hit on all the time in that context.
And like, she's customer service.
Yeah, like, so I think she just has a good head on her shoulders and is like really trying not to get involved with someone who is clearly not in a good place.
Yeah.
So basically, he feels like hella rejected.
The next day, Peter is like, you know, he's feeling pretty good. So he goes down to the front desk and is talking to Rachel, and Rachel's like, "Let's go for a hike. Let's go for it." And like, he's like, "Oh, all right."
And
sure.
he says he wants to go to this one place, and she's like, "That's a hard hike," and he's like, "I'll be fine."
Mm-hmm. And so they do the hike, and it's a hard hike, and he gets to the top. I think he's wearing flip-flops the whole time,
also.
Too. Dumb. So they get to the top, and, like, she's wearing, like, little Sophie shorts, which, like, if you're a child of the early 2000s, Sophie shorts is so triggering, just the phrase.
Sure.
And she convinces him to jump off the side of this cliff with her.
Basically, well, and there's one moment that I feel is really important where he's like, "I'm kind of glad that this happened to me, though, you know, because I almost feel kind of, like, impervious to pain. Like, when something like that hurts you so badly, it's like, you know, nothing can, like, break you." And he's like, "I could, like, jump off this cliff right now and, like, it wouldn't even faze me." And she's like, "So do it."
And, like, he looks like he's about to go in for the kiss again. And as he does it,
she jumps.
Yeah, she turns and jumps off the side of the cliff.
And then he goes, "I made her kill herself."
I made her kill herself.
I love that.
And so she convinces him to jump off with her, but...
This is exactly why I don't do shit like that.
Yeah.
Because what happens to him is, period, point blank, exactly what would happen to me. I would be like, I'm having a moment. You know, this is like going to be a turning point in my life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
be
jump
impulsive.
off the side of this Hawaiian cliff today. And he fucking slips on his way to jump. And then he's hanging off the ledge by branches.
Yeah.
I love when he's just like, "Please, God, don't let me die today." And then she's like...
coaching him on how to, like, launch himself off the side.
She's basically like, "No, he's like, I'll just fall straight down." And she's like, "No, you'll hit rocks and kill yourself. Yeah. You need to, like, project yourself off." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Totally."
Totally. So he does do it.
He does do it.
They count down, and he jumps into the water. And that is when they finally kiss.
And she kisses him.
She kisses him, which is great because I feel like it's, like, giving her the time to feel out the situation and see, like, where it's going and how she's feeling.
And he's like, because he's like, "Did you see that?" And she's like, "I did. I saw it." And then she, like, grabs him and kisses him. And it's it's such a cute moment.
Yeah.
And
after that is when we find out that Sarah's show has been canceled.
Yes.
So, crime scene of the crime. She gets a call while she's with Aldous and is told that her show is canceled. And Aldous is like, "Oh, well, that's great. You wanted to do features anyway, and this way you can just go on tour with me."
Yeah, springs on her that in 2 weeks he's going on an 18-month tour, which, like...
Bro. Fucking Aquarius.
I think it's funny you think he's an Aquarius.
But she's, like, clearly feeling upset about that and, like, is going to drink by herself. And Peter sees her when she's drinking, and she says, "So I had an interesting call, like, crime scene's canceled." And he goes, "Oh."
No, and then I love how she's like, "I think it's good because I've been wanting to, you know, go into movies." And he's like, this isn't the view. Like, you can have an honest conversation with me. And I think that's a moment for her where she's like...
This is a good moment in the movie because you see her fear. And, like, they really humanize Sarah. Like, because it's easy to be like, she's the villain.
A bitch.
She's a bitch. She cheated on him.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm scared if I get out of the spotlight, I'm never going to have it again," which is such a fear for actors.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine what that feels like.
And I think also it's like this moment where she realizes, like, I'm with someone right now who I can't talk to, like, the way that I could talk to Peter.
Exactly.
So
Peter and Rachel decide to go to dinner that night. And when they're waiting to get into dinner, Aldous and, the shirt.
I was going to say,
yeah.
So I love how they do this too, because there's this moment with Sarah and Aldous where Aldous is wearing this, like, what I would be like, yeah, it's funny.
Like a
it's
mesh
like this mesh, shirt. Like, tight shirt. And he's like, can I borrow your lipstick? I'm just like, but she's like, oh, like, you don't want to wear the shirt that I bought you? And he's like, yeah, Tommy Bahama seems like a great guy, but I just feel like this is like the vibe I want tonight. Yeah. And she's just like, oh, okay. And then she has a flash of all the times that Peter wore ugly shit that she bought him proudly. Yeah. Like, a shirt that was ugly. And he's like, oh, Sarah bought it for me. An Ed Hardy hat.
Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting because, like, as her memories are going backwards, his memories are going forward. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, he's moving forward and not spending as much time in his memories, whereas she's starting to spend more time in the memories.
Which makes sense, given how they broke up. Yeah. Because she started something new and exciting with this, like, famous guy, and there was, like, all that adrenaline. She was probably not as focused on the positive things about Peter at that point.
So after this scene with the shirt, because Aldous does eventually put the shirt on because he sees, like, Sarah wants him to wear it. Which is a nice moment for Aldous.
Except he's a dick about it the entire time he has it on.
He's a dick about it the whole time.
I would never make you wear that shirt, Russell. Just know.
So we get
Keep
to
the mesh on.
We get to the restaurant, and Peter and Rachel are waiting for their table. And that's when Sarah and Aldous show up. And they're like, oh, this is weird. And, like, Peter says offhandedly, like, well, you guys are more than welcome to join us if you want. Like, not thinking that... Because
Sarah and Aldous kept doing that to him.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh, you can join us. And obviously Peter would say no.
Yeah. And so Sarah, because she's having all these retroactive feelings, is like, yeah, great.
Also, side note, at some point, like, in the last few days, Sarah had noticed that he was hanging out a lot with Rachel and, like, went to the front desk and was like... you're really pretty. Like, Peter's a really good guy. Like, and it was just awkward. Like,
it's like one of those weird moments where it's like clearly she's missing him.
Yes.
And
so anyway, they're at the restaurant.
And Peter says, like, I never thought she'd say yes. And Rachel goes, I did. So they're sitting there talking. Aldous is pontificating about whatever bullshit comes out of his mouth. Like, how he just wants to live in the fuck.
literally just like, all we have is sex. And that's, why wouldn't we do the most interesting thing possible with anyone that we could do it with? And like, yeah, let's just fuck each other. And of course, Peter is like, yeah, I gotta disagree with you. Like, I much prefer, like, getting to know someone. And like, of course, like,
it's so swoon.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, tensions are just pretty high. Like, Sarah's taking little digs at Rachel, saying, like, Hawaii's great for a week, but I think it's just a place people go to run away. And then Rachel makes out with Peter and goes, I like living here.
Yeah.
And, like, it's
getting tense.
It's getting tense.
I do have to bring up my favorite part in that whole scene is when they start talking about Sarah's movie about cell phones.
Yeah.
And Aldous is like, shit, that was a shit movie. It was terrible. And Peter's like, I told her not to do that movie. Like, it's such a dumb plot. Like, what, your cell phone's gonna kill you? And she's like, it's a metaphor for our, you know, our need for technology. And Russell goes, it's a metaphor for a crap movie.
Yeah.
And then Jason's like, you wanna know my favorite part? And like, it's just so funny. I love that whole scene.
It's so good.
And it's like almost like probably as Sarah, like, so frustrating that like Peter and Aldous are like joking together and vibing, you know?
And I think earlier in this day, like, Peter found out from Aldous that he had been sleeping with Sarah a year before. Like, fully a year before they even broke up.
Yes.
And, like, Peter and Aldous have this moment where, like, he has to save him from, like, the coral in his leg. And, like, he confronts Sarah about it and tells her, like, hey, you know something that's really funny? I found out you've been fucking him for, like, a year, and, like, they have this moment.
I actually love that moment, too, because, again, where you're going with Sarah being humanized, like, there's this moment. Yeah. There's a moment, because he's like, you've been fucking him for a year? Like,
did you even try?
What did I do? Like, what did I do so bad? And she was like, it's nothing that you did. It's just, like...
what you didn't do.
Yeah. And he's like... well, how come you didn't try to, like, fix us? And she's like, you think I didn't try? I had therapy. I talked to my mother. I went to sex seminars. I went to love seminars. I read every book, and nothing could get you off the couch.
Yeah.
You would wear sweatpants every day. Like, I couldn't get you. I couldn't sync with you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's, like, such a humanizing moment for Sarah because, again,
two sides to every
we
story.
villainize, and I'm not condoning cheating by any means, but we do tend to villainize the cheater a lot of times without the full context of the story. I think, was that the right thing to do? Absolutely not. She should have broke up with him. But it's so complex and complicated when you're dealing with someone who isn't taking care of themselves. That fear that, like, what if I break up with them and then, like, that's the end, that's the last straw for them or whatever. So it was kind of nice to, like, see her experience, and I don't think a lot of movies do that.
Not at all. Yeah.
You never see the perspective of the other person.
Yeah, I really loved that scene because she was like, I did everything I could. You were just too stupid to notice.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how you feel sometimes. Like, I've been trying, but you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So,
and, like, depression can make you, like, selfish.
Yeah.
So, like, I know, like, looking back in my relationships I've had, realizing how much my depression affected the other people involved.
Same.
It's like, that's something that, you know, doesn't get talked about a lot. So I love how they brought that up.
It doesn't get as much sympathy for the people around you. So after this dinner scene, Rachel and Peter, you know, start getting hot and heavy. They start having sex in Peter's hotel room. And Peter's hotel room.
And this is after, so that conversation that we were just talking about happened like a day before, and then the dinner scene happened. We kind of got out of sequence.
Yeah.
So they just had that awkward dinner where it's like everyone's kind of taking digs at each other, and it's so awkward. And you can also tell that, like, Sarah and Aldous are not in a good place.
Yeah.
So anyway, then they're going back to their room.
Yeah, they're having sex, Rachel and Peter. And Sarah hears him from the other side of the wall because Peter's room is connected by a wall. And she, like, immediately thinks, like, I have to get into competition with him. So she wakes up Aldous to have sex, and, like, she's screaming on her side, and you can tell Aldous is just kind of like, what is happening?
Yep.
Whereas Peter and Rachel are, like, actually, like, they're doing it at first, like, screaming, like, back at her. But, like, then they start actually enjoying themselves.
Yeah. And Aldous kind of, like, pushes Sarah off of him and is like, yeah, I've heard that people fake orgasms before.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it. That was an awful display, and I think I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And she kind of starts going off on him.
Bullshit. And it's clearly, like, the end.
Yeah.
She says, like, she says, finally, like, I hate your music. And he goes, yeah, well, I fucked the housekeeper yesterday. And so it's very...
It's the end.
It's the end. That's it. So the next morning, Peter and Rachel are having this really lovely moment where they're like, you know, I really like you, and, like, this has been a lot of fun, and, like, I mean it.
Yeah.
So Rachel leaves, and
Peter's having this amazing day. It's the first day he's not drinking. He, like, goes in water slides and goes to the pool and goes to a wedding, and it's like... He's feeling so much better, and then he happens to see Aldous. And Aldous basically tells him, yeah, we broke up. I'm going to go back to London. And he's like, I'm going to fuck you see my driver? I'm going to fuck her. Yeah. And then he just leaves.
Yeah.
And, of course, Peter is worried about Sarah, so he goes to her room.
And checks on her.
Which is like, bad idea, bucko.
Yep.
Basically, Sarah confesses that she still has feelings for him, and Aldous is gone.
I also think she's just so scared of being alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, I think she was right that their relationship wasn't working.
Yeah,
but
100%.
I get that feeling of, like...
This is comfortable.
Because also the problem with Peter wasn't him as a partner, as a boyfriend. It was just where his mental health was at, you know? And that's a tough thing. So... Basically, she starts kissing him, and he starts to kiss her back, and then you're like, wait, what the fuck?
Yep.
And then she's like, I want you, Peter, I want you, and he's basically trying to get hard.
And he can't. Yeah.
And she's like, what's wrong with you? Like, have you been drinking? When he says, have you been drinking? Or when she says, have you been drinking?
It's
she,
like the last
gives him,
straw.
like, a blowjob for a couple minutes, and it's not working. And he just, that moment of just that judgment in her voice, like... have you been drinking?
Yeah.
He's just like, no. He's like, my cock just doesn't want you anymore because you broke my heart into
heart's
a
so
million
bad.
pieces.
Yeah. So after that, he realizes, like, oh, shit, I have to go tell Rachel this. So he tells Rachel, like, you know, something happened with Sarah. Like, we fooled around, and he's, like, tiptoeing around it. And, like, Mila Kunis does such a good job in this scene where she's, like, clearly upset but doesn't want to show she's upset. And she tells him to leave. She says, tell
me exactly what happened. So he does. He's like, I received 10 to 15 seconds of oral sex, and we made out a little bit.
Yeah.
And she's like, leave. And don't call me, and don't text me, and don't email me. I don't ever want to hear from you again. And he's like, but I know there's something between us. Like, I know we have a connection. And she's just like, you don't need to be with anybody right now.
Yeah, which is true.
And I think she was mad at herself because that's why she was holding back in the beginning anyways. And
because
so,
he clearly still loved Sarah.
Yeah, he's not ready to be in a relationship. And that's a mistake that so many people make after they get out of a long term. Is they go right into another thing. And it's like, it's such a mess.
Yeah.
So basically that's how their storyline ends.
Well, he goes and gets her picture from the bar.
Oh, yeah.
And gets the shit kicked out of him because he steals this picture. And he comes back just to, like, prove, like, I still like you. I think this is something we should fight for. But here, like, I know this is something that upset you. And so as he's leaving, like, he hugs, like, the employees goodbye. And he heads back to L.A. and is very depressed for a little bit.
Yeah, best part.
Peter, you suck.
Peter, you suck. Peter, you don't do anything about you. That song.
Relatable.
Oh my God. If you can't relate to that, I can't relate to you. You know what I mean?
Go see a psychiatrist. I don't like the psychiatrist. Well, go see one anyway.
I'm not going. It's so good. Because especially, I think as a creative person, it's like, that's how like my writing ends up being sometimes. Where I'm just like, you're a dumb idiot.
Yeah.
Like, so he's clearly just going through the grieving process, you know?
Again.
And then I love it because it shows him starting to play his song from the Dracula musical. And then all of a sudden you see he's writing, he's cleaning, he's on the treadmill. He's just in a much better
turn
place.
Things around. Yeah.
Growth, bitch. We love to see it.
Time
heals all.
She's a beautiful healer.
Yeah. And I think it's so crazy how, like, that interaction with her, like, with Rachel made him realize, like, he did need to, like, be the type of person that someone could be with.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't at that time, even before him and Sarah broke up. So it was this opportunity for him to, like, clean himself up and just be okay with who he is on his own.
Yeah, 100%. So we see that Rachel gets an invitation to see Dracula the Rock Opera.
So cute.
And it's for 2 nights only. And, like, you can tell she's, like, considering it. She doesn't know. But, like, then we cut to the Dracula Rock Opera. And it is so good. The way I want this to happen in such a bad way. Like, I would kill to see this musical. And it's just, like, puppets. And, like, clearly it's, like, really well produced.
Funny.
Like, Bill Hader's in it. He lets his stepbrother be in it as Van Helsing. And as Peter's singing this finale song, he sees Rachel in the audience. And so he's doing, like, the stage door or whatever after a musical. And, like, he sees Rachel and they have a conversation. And she's like, you didn't text or call. And he said, you asked me not to. And I think that's so beautiful. He's listening to her boundaries. Like, still, he sent her, like, an invitation.
But that was so subtle.
Yeah, 100. It wasn't like...
There was no or letter with it. It was just the invite.
Yeah. And he was like, I might have called once from a private number and hung up. But, like, it's really respecting her boundaries because she was clearly upset. And everyone needs space after that.
And I feel like the way that interaction was where she was just like, it's good to see you. And he was like, it's great to see you. Like, you look great. Do you want to hang out while you're here? And she's like, yeah, I'm thinking about going back to school, so I'm here
She said she's there open-ended, which is, like, really promising.
Yes. So... so then she's like, I'll let you schmooze and, like, go talk to people. And she's like, well, I'll text you. We'll make plans this week or whatever. So he is talking to everybody. And, like, then he goes into, like, the back area to change out of his unitard. And he's changing. And he and all of a sudden, like, the door swings open, and his gorgeous penis.
His beautiful penis. His cute penis.
Is out in the wide open space. And obviously, she just starts laughing. And she's like, Peter! Oh
and
my
he's
God.
like, please stop laughing.
He's like, please stop laughing. Please stop laughing. And she's just like, Peter. And he's like,
trying to talk to her.
And he was like, I was just calling you.
Mm-hmm.
And
she walks over and kisses him.
And okay, I love that juxtaposition of, like, in the beginning, Sarah was, like, grossed out by him being naked. Yeah. And
she just finds it so grabs endearing.
Him and, like, hugs him and kisses him. I just think that's so cute.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's how it ends.
Yeah. We see, like, during, like, the credits, like, Sarah has started, like, a new animal detective
show. Which is clearly,
show.
like, worse.
It's so bad.
It's called, what is it called?
Animal Instincts.
Animal Instincts.
And she's, like, a psychic who can read animals' minds. And, like, Jason Bateman's in it, which, like, I love that they brought him just for this scene. Love him. And, yeah, it's clear that, like, Peter's growing and, like, it's something we all have to go through. And that's the way the movie ends. And it's just a beautiful movie. It is. And hilarious. And absolutely so hysterical.
That movie makes me laugh out loud
every single time.
Much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Truly, like, laugh out loud. Even, like, Mike was laughing so hard, you know? It's so funny.
Every single time that movie gets me. Yeah. So, Catherine.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
What was the question?
How did this movie fuck you up?
First time I watched it, it fucked me up because I was like, I'm in love with this guy, Russell Brand. But I think because I'd never seen... Jason does this in another movie too, 5 Year Engagement. But, like, he really encapsulates how I feel. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. But, like, just the drama and, like, the sensitivity. It's, like, so me. Yeah. And I loved that because that's just so me. I relate to that so much. Like, just, like, every single thing reminds me of them. And, like, all of that. And, you know, having, you know, struggled with depression in my life, too. Like, all the scenes where he's just on the couch. Yep. You know, it's like, I've seen it. I've been there. I've done it.
We've been there.
So I feel like it just encapsulated, like, my breakup energy. And I felt really seen in that way. And it's just so funny.
I feel like it encapsulated my pandemic energy.
Yeah, true. So, Danielle.
Huh?
I'll just got a little question for you.
What's that, love?
How did this movie fuck you up, yeah?
I mean, what we talked about earlier, like, showing male tears, essentially. Like, breaking down masculinity and being able to be like, men can grieve and be sad too, and not just do the one tear, suck it back in, and then turn it into anger or, like, turn it into some other conquest. But also at the same time, I think it fucked me up by humanizing who's supposed to be the villain.
Yes.
By saying, like, there are two sides to relationships. Yes, it's fucked up she cheated, but here are all the reasons
why
and,
this
like,
happens.
That you should talk to each other before it gets to that point. But, like, sometimes, like, relationships break down to the point where you don't feel like you can talk to the person. And, like, bad things happen. Everyone makes mistakes. And, like, I think it did a really good job at showing her not just being this evil person, but, like, showing her as, like, vulnerable, like, scared about her career, scared about being alone, scared about what she's doing. And I think that was a really beautiful moment. And I think, yeah, I loved what they did with all the characters. Every character has their own arc.
Me too.
You know, Rachel wasn't just, like, this person for Peter to project his breakup onto. She had her own issues she was going through, and, like, Peter had his issues. Sarah had her issues. Aldous liked to fuck. But I just think, yeah, I really appreciate the way it humanizes her and isn't just like, when women cheat, they're wrong.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's really beautiful. Did they or didn't they?
Did they or didn't they? You know, we've been on a hot streak of they didn't, but today they did.
They did. And it was really it was, to me, like, the healthiest they did in a long while, because it was, like, two people who took the time to figure out if... To heal, to grow, and to see if they were right for each other, if they still missed each other, you know?
Yeah.
And they did.
So. And they did. And it was such a beautiful did.
Yeah. Well, that is our show for this week.
That's our show.
No.
That's our show.
Thank
we
you.
can't have 8 jingles.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you to Pearl for the use of our theme song and our outro song.
Yes.
Thank you to Brittany.
Brittany, thank you so much, you beautiful angel.
We love you.
Love this movie. Thank you for
Such a good
recommending it. And again, thank you for listening and supporting.
And if you would like to recommend, follow us on Instagram, Will They Won't They Pod. We may have some other media socially coming up. And yeah, like us, subscribe, rate. We would very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You're all beautiful and we love you. Bye.
We love you. Bye.